This is topic 4, and we are looking at Hitler's rise to power. We are now in this middle section here, and I'm going to try and take you through most of these things here on this PowerPoint. So, to begin then, we have got the early development of the Nazi Party. Now, you will know by now that Hitler didn't create the Nazis, he didn't invent them, he simply took another party over. And there have been some slight changes in the spec. So the things that you really need to know are about our creation of our paramilitary group, the SA, and the 25-point programme. Therefore, these things are in gold here because they are the most important. So, 1920, there still very much is a Weimar government. Let's have a look what Hitler was doing. Hitler decides to join the German Workers' Party. He has went to a couple of their speeches and he's realised he really quite likes what they're saying. And the way that he kind of takes control of the party, we've taught you via this here, blast, and it should be these things up here. The brown shirts, leadership, appeal to the public, strategy, and the 25-point programme. So the first thing he does is he forces a leadership contest in which Anton Drexler is forced out and Hitler takes control. He creates the brown shirts, which are a paramilitary force. So they're not an official army of sorts. He has just managed to round up lots of angry men that are out of work and need some sort of employment. So they are known as the brown shirts. They are unemployed ex-soldiers and they are showing displays out on the streets which make people think that the Nazis might have some sort of organisation to them. They are a display of power. They are controlling crowds with violence and they've grown to 800 by 1920 and they are there to disrupt other political meetings. You may have remembered from one of the prior videos that at this time people were hiring private bodyguard units. He appeals to the public in a way that perhaps Drexler didn't, in that he's a great orator. He's a very good public speaker. He is frantic, he is persuasive, he spits when he talks, he makes eye contact with people, and he makes sure that publicity photos are spread around which show hundreds of people attending these speeches by the Nazis. Membership rises to 3,000 under Hitler in these early years, 1920 to 1922. This shows that people are attracted to the way that he delivers his speeches. He also is responsible for a couple of other things, including that meetings are well publicised, so people actually attend and then they want to join as members. It makes nationalism and socialism a part of the Nazi name. So the Nazis are short for National Socialist German Workers' Party. He feels if he puts nationalism and socialism as part of the party name, he will attract both those lower class workers and also those big industrialists. He wants it to be a party for everybody. He also adopts the swastika and the salute as well, so they are set aside from other parties. They are recognisable. The next thing he does is he makes sure that people understand what the Nazi Party are about. So by drawing up the 25-point programme, he sets out the Nazi position as a protest party against the Weimar government. They're also against democracy and they are very much against the Jews. So those are the three things that they are really focusing on here. They also encourage people to support a greater Germany. So this includes things like taking land from bordering countries in order to create a great Germany. He also believes that Jews should be blamed for the loss of World War I and the corruption of Germany, and that Germany needs to be run by a military of sorts, and that democracy doesn't help the people. Next, we have the Munich Putsch. So things take a slight detour in 1923. A putsch is a type of power grab. So why did Hitler lead a putsch against the Bavarian government? Well, in the short term, events of the Ruhr and hyperinflation had left Germany in quite a bad political and economic state. In the medium term, he is very inspired by Mussolini and his march on Rome. This is where fascism spread across Italy really rather quickly, and he's inspired by this. He likes the intense nationalism and the authoritarian militarism that Mussolini has managed to deliver. In return, Mussolini doesn't like him very much. In the long term, the Treaty of Versailles is still causing some problems, and the Weimar government are starting to push people to extreme parties when we have events like the Ruhr and hyperinflation. So this is the reason that Hitler decides to seize the moment and he leads the Munich Putsch. So the story is he decides to try and take power, but not in Berlin. Berlin is quite a risky place to be. There are lots of armed men on the streets and strong communist support there. So he decides to go to Bavaria, where he feels like he can take over, announce himself as the new leader, and that there will be little opposition. This is known sometimes as the beer hall putsch because it takes place in a political meeting held at a beer hall in Bavaria. The leader of Bavaria is there, von Kahr, the leader of the police, von Caesar, and the leader of the Bavarian army, von Lossow, is there too. Hitler is supported by General Ludendorff and Ernst Röhm. Röhm is the leader of the SA and they are quite loyal to him. He is a decorated military man himself and he supports Hitler. During the putsch, the three leaders are released and they alert the local army barracks and also the police. There is a clash where the two groups are going to meet in the square at Munich. Hitler robs a Jewish bank along the way and pays people to join in this uprising. When they meet at the square, the Nazis are far outnumbered by the police and the army, and the whole thing fails. I believe at the time Hitler only has 600 men with him. So they are grossly outnumbered. So the putsch fails, Hitler runs away, he's found hiding in a cupboard somewhere, and he is put on trial for treason against the state. You're not allowed to simply go and take over a country. He uses the trial, though, to make these impassioned speeches about his love of Germany and acts like him and the Nazis are martyrs to the cause. He's sent to prison for 5 years but only serves 9, and whilst he's in prison he makes some decisions about changing the way he's going to take power. Instead of leading a violent coup, a violent takeover, he's going to try and do it legally. So they drop this idea of any more putches and he starts to write Mein Kampf when he is in prison. And Mein Kampf is a book which incorporates much of the 25-point programme. He lays out once again this idea of Lebensraum, wanting to take neighbouring land for the German people to make a greater Germany. He sets out that Jews are not German blood and should not be permitted to be in Germany, and also sets out that all German speakers should be allowed to unite, which of course is one of the terms in the Treaty of Versailles that is banned. Our next period of time is called the lean years, and you are going to look at how the Nazis are able to cope with events of the lean years. So this is a period of time where Hitler has been released from prison in 1924, and despite working very hard to try and take power by legal means, they don't earn that much more support, and we're going to find out why. The ban on the Nazis is lifted. They have been banned after the Munich Putsch, and this allows Hitler to get meetings going again. So firstly, Mein Kampf is published, and these are some of the things that are set out here. He believes in a mass race, these pure blood German people, these Aryan people. He believes that Jews weaken the master race alongside others. He sets out that Nazis stand for nationalism and socialism, but also totalitarianism. So totalitarianism is total control. Instead of having a democracy, your state controls everything. Your work, your family, your religion. It's state control. He also believes in traditional German values, so that traditional family structure once more, and this includes things like traditional art and cinema. So how do they cope with these changes? Well, he firstly sets out to try and control the party a little bit more. He sets 35 local offices across Germany, and they are called the Go, and they are led by a Go-Leiter. They report back to ongoings in Munich, as this is where they've set up their headquarters. This just allows him to organise the Nazi party in a little more of a stronger and controlled way. The next thing he does at the headquarters is he organises the Nazi party like a mini state. Each section has a department that has a place for everybody. So they have a department for propaganda, for women, for the youth. And also they are able to encourage funding from big German business such as Bosch. And they get them to donate by reminding them that they don't want a communist takeover, so they should invest in a strong nationalist party like the Nazis. Also, Hitler establishes the SS here. Now, the SS are different to the SA because Hitler hand selects them. They are like a private elite bodyguard for the Nazis. And Hitler does this because he's starting to become worried about the strength of the SA. Now, remember, the SA are loyal to Ernst Röhm, and Hitler doesn't like this. The SA have numbered 400,000 by 1930, and the SS are just 3,000. They wear a different uniform, they're dressed in black, so they are set aside. But here we've got Hitler controlling two paramilitary groups. Now remember, at this time, he really shouldn't be controlling any paramilitary groups because a term of the Treaty of Versailles is a limit on armies in Germany. Further, he improves the economic state of the Nazis by employing a treasurer, and he works hard to increase those donations, as mentioned earlier, by Bosch, for example. The next big thing to happen is the Bamberg Conference, and this is a conference held by Hitler, and he sets out some changes for the Nazi Party. The reason that he holds this conference is because there are some conflicting ideas about nationalism and socialism in the Nazi Party. So different Go-Lighters believe in different things. So socialists stand for your workers, your everyday man, and the nationalists stand for your big businesses that can make big profits for Germany. He holds the conference in Bavaria, and the reason he picks Bavaria is he wants more nationalist Go-Lighters to be able to attend this. So already we've got a big hint here that he's looking to drop socialism. He wants it to be harder for the socialist Go-Lighters to attend here. He makes quite an impassioned speech about the role of the Nazis and that really he believes that they should be dropping nationalism. Now, the Go-Lighters from the northern areas are where we've got big German industry, and they are going to be really pushing for socialism because they want the benefits for the workers. Go-Lighters in the southern rural areas of Germany are going to be representing nationalist areas. They want a strong German state and they want action against the Jews. Hitler makes as mentioned before, a 5-hour-long speech to try and unite this faction within his party. And Joseph Goebbels is in attendance. Now you'll recognise his name as he later becomes the Minister of Propaganda. And Goebbels attends as somebody from a socialist region, but he is persuaded by Hitler, partly because he would like a big promotion, so he decides to switch to agree to what Hitler says, and they are looking to drop socialism in favour of nationalism. Meanwhile, another Go-Lighter called Gregor Strasser is from the north, and he is there and he's fuming with what Hitler is saying, and he's also very angry that Goebbels has abandoned the workers and decided to fight for stronger nationalism in the party. He's so cross that he refers to him as a scheming dwarf. Nonetheless, the Bamberg Conference secures that the party are going to quietly drop socialism and they're going to try and promote nationalism. Why then, despite doing quite a lot of work here to establish the party and make them recognisable as a sensible and responsible party, do they not receive that much support in these years? Well, firstly, we've got an improvement in the Weimar Republic. The Reichsmark and the Dawes Plan have restored economic stability, and when things are good, people don't vote for extreme parties like the Nazis. This leads to more support for the Social Democrats, which are our moderate, slightly centre-left party, and not many people are voting for the Nazis at this time. Next, the foreign policy of Gustav Stresemann has led to better status for Germany, which means that less people will vote extreme. Next, Hindenburg becomes president and he is popular amongst the people, which once again cuts support for the Nazis. Whilst the economy is strong, Hitler is going to get little support from the working classes. And the working classes, if they're going to vote extreme, they do tend to vote communist anyway. So by 1928, the Nazi Party only got 1% of the votes in Berlin and the Ruhr region. This overall equates to 12 seats or 2.6% of the vote. So what is the event that leads Hitler into power? Well, it's something that has nothing to do with him really. He is just able to grab support here. In 1929, the Wall Street crash happens. Further, Stresemann has also passed away in October of this year. Now, the Wall Street crash has its origins in the USA. This is where share prices fall in New York and it leads to a stock market crash. This means that the USA starts to recall all of its foreign loans in Europe, including from Germany. Now, you will remember that they've borrowed $25 billion worth of money for investment. So this is an awful lot of money Germany has to find to repay USA. The Germans rush to withdraw their money and the banks quickly run out of paper currency. This leads to an economic collapse, not just abroad but in Germany too. So what does this mean? Industries and farms have to cut down on production. This means that many farm workers are unemployed, and also farmers that had taken out loans to buy farm machinery now find themselves having to pay that money back. Workers are poorer. This means that they are spending less in the economy. This means that less workers are needed, so it leads to higher rates of unemployment. The government, in reaction to this, have to charge higher taxes and cut benefits. This means, again, there is less money in the economy. Wages are cut by up to 70%, which again means there's less money for people to spend in the economy, and trade in Germany slumps. This leads to higher rents as well, which means more homelessness as less people can afford their rents. This leads to shanty towns springing up, which are makeshift homes, which are normally places of violence and criminality. This leads to a spike in violence. Chancellor Brüning, who is the new head of the Weimar Republic, is a centrist, and he has to use Article 48 multiple times to try and run Germany whilst they are being impacted by the events of the Wall Street crash. This leads to an unstable Weimar government. You will remember that using Article 48 is not democratic and is not the way that you should run a country. This leads to people losing support for the Weimar Republic, and people start to vote for Nazis or communists, so they're extreme parties, when times are bad. Middle and upper classes are more likely to vote for Nazis, whereas your workers are more likely to vote for your communists. Let's see who was voting for Hitler and the Nazis at this time then. So after the Wall Street crash, big businesses turned to Hitler because of the uncertainty. They certainly don't want communists to take over and to make them national companies. They, in return, fund Hitler's campaigns in 1930 and 1932, including his aeroplane, so he is able to fly to multiple cities in Germany a day to make speeches. Next, the working class. He tries to attract them with his slogan, work and bread. So his promise is that the lower classes vote for Hitler, they will always have bread and they will always have income. He will create those jobs for the German people. Remember that socialism has quietly been dropped after the Bamberg Conference, so he has to promise the German workers that he and the Nazis are really working for them. This doesn't really work. The communists still have the majority of the working class vote. Next, the middle class voters. They don't tend to vote for extreme parties. However, this is a time of great uncertainty, and seeing the uniformed SA brown shirts out on the streets make the Nazis appear organised and orderly during time of great turmoil, so this attracts more middle class voters. Next, we have farmers. Because of the 25-point programme, some farmers were put off voting Nazi because one of the things they say is about taking land for the greater Germany, for the people, and farmers don't want this. But Hitler promises them that they were only going to take land from Jewish people, and this leads to a huge voting electorate from the farming community. In some rural areas, they get up to 60% of the farm vote. So farmers are very much pro this. They know that if they vote for communists, the communists are going to take their land and they are going to make it communal land. The young are voting for the Nazis as well. So at a time where there is not much stability, the Nazis look exciting to young people. They hold multiple speeches with light shows and they use technology in their speeches. This attracts the younger voters as it gives them hope for the future. Finally, some women also vote for the Nazis. They are attracted because the Nazis promise that their husbands will have work and that women can be supported in living a traditional life and a traditional role. This looks appealing to women when there is a time of chaos and turmoil. Finally, then, we are going to look at Hitler's climb to Chancellor. We need to be aware here of several men that are instrumental in putting Hitler into power. So remember Heinrich Brüning. You don't need to know too much about him, but just that he is the leader of the Centre Party and he is the leader of the Weimar Republic at this time. President Hindenburg is our popular president who is quite traditionalist in his views, but he is the leader of the Weimar Republic. He's right at the top there as president. Franz von Papen, we are going to speak about him on the next couple of slides, but you know that he is Chancellor before Hitler is, alongside Kurt von Schleicher there, and finally we've got Hitler. These are all our big players in the next part of the story. Okay, the next part of our story you need to know about how Hitler manoeuvres himself to become Chancellor in 1932 to 1933. So, over the course of the next year, there are a series of elections where the Nazis edge closer and closer to power. So, let's have a look how he does this. Firstly, we begin with a presidential election. Hindenburg's 7 years are up and he is campaigning to be elected as president again. He needs the majority to do this, so he needs over 50%. Meanwhile, the rest of the political parties are campaigning to be the next chancellor, and to do this, they need the majority party in the Reichstag. They hold this vote in March of 1932 and Hindenburg does not get the majority he needs, but the Nazis are showing promise here with 30% of the vote, so you can see they're gaining some popularity. It's still not a majority though. They re-hold the election in 1932 and Hitler works very hard to deliver 4 speeches a day by flying all over Germany on his aeroplane that the nationalists have funded here. He also makes sure that he utilises SA violence, so he is sending his paramilitary group to disrupt speeches and start beating opponents up in order to make sure that his speeches are the most impactful and effective. It works for him. Hitler gets his 53%, so he's got his majority, and Hitler's Nazis have won 36% of the vote. Still not the majority they need, but they are now the largest party in the Reichstag, showing their growing popularity. However, Hitler is not Chancellor at this point. Brüning, the leader of the Centre Party, is hanging on. However, he's made some bad choices that make him unpopular, and he is asked to resign, and that's exactly what he does. As you know, Hindenburg should select the leader of the biggest party to be chancellor, but he doesn't do this, mainly because he despises Hitler. So instead, von Papen is made the new chancellor. He has a minority government, and we know that nobody has the majority. So because of this, he has to govern frequently using Article 48, those emergency decrees. We know this is undemocratic and this is unpopular. It's against the spirit of the Weimar Constitution. It should be democratic. His government also gets the nickname the Cabinet of Barons because he picks all of his rich German aristocratic friends to be in the best, most prominent government jobs, not the people that are best running Germany. Therefore, a coalition with the Nazis is suggested in order to help him run the country. Hitler says he would agree to this as long as the ban on the SA is lifted. They have been banned after some of their violent actions. This agreement, this coalition, would give Hitler some political legitimacy in the Reichstag. It would show mainstream acceptance and that the Nazis should be accepted as responsible statesmen. This would also give him access to government resources and a say in decision making, which is rather dangerous, as we know. Therefore, von Papen dissolves the Reichstag and calls for an election. Now he strongly feels that he can govern the country because he will have the Nazis helping him do so. The coalition will mean that the Nazis help vote through von Papen's policies and laws, and he'll be able to do his day-to-day running of the country without using Article 48. During this election, the campaigning is very violent. The Nazis and the communists, there is violence on both sides, but 100 people are killed and 7,000 are injured as the campaign is ongoing. The Nazis win 38% of the votes. This makes them the largest party in Germany with 230 seats. Remember, this is still not a majority. He'd need 50% for that. Hitler is feeling so confident about these new numbers that he goes to Hindenburg and asks him to sack von Papen and make him chancellor instead. Hindenburg says no to this. One thing to note here as well, that this 38%, this is the highest amount of votes that the Nazis ever receive. And it's worth noting here that this shows that in Germany, Hitler never really has full support. At most, only 38% of people vote for the Nazis, which means that later on when he comes to power, he knows most people didn't really want him in power. But it gives him great confidence at the time, and because there is no true majority, another election is set. In November of 1932, von Papen cannot still get a majority, and Nazi seats fall slightly at this next election to 196. They're still the largest party, but still not a majority. Hindenburg, therefore, tells von Papen to resign because he can't get the majority he needs, and it looks like Hitler should be named as the next chancellor. However, Hindenburg is so resistant to do this, he refuses to name him as chancellor. Instead, in 1932, December, von Schleicher is made Chancellor. Von Schleicher is kind of like a political advisor, and he finds himself in a position that he is now Chancellor of Germany. It's a desperate move as he is not popular himself, but Hindenburg really does not want the Nazi Party in power. In 1933, in January, there are some big changes. This is our big turning point where Hitler is going to be made Chancellor. Schleicher has no real support as Chancellor in the Reichstag. The public don't like him, and he is finding it hard to govern, just like every Chancellor before him. He therefore asks Hindenburg to suspend the democratic constitution and make Schleicher the head of a military dictatorship. This is completely undemocratic, and Hindenburg very much refuses. Then there are rumours swirling around of a military coup. It's suggested that Schleicher is just going to seize power and he's going to run Germany through military means. Von Papen, who is still quite friendly with Hindenburg despite being asked to resign earlier on, suggests that Hitler is made Chancellor and von Papen is made Vice-Chancellor. Therefore, Hindenburg and von Papen can keep an eye on Hitler and they can keep him under control. Von Papen is noted as saying, that he can keep Hitler in his pocket, and within 2 months they will have pushed Hitler so far into a corner he will squeak. Very reluctantly, Hindenburg agrees to this, and they decide that Hitler will become Chancellor on the 30th of January 1933. This is Hitler's first big step into power. He is now Chancellor of Germany in January 1933. This paves way for him to take complete power later on.